Production crews are tough. Everyone that works in entertainment, I like to joke that it's a little bit of a circus because you travel all around the world. These are people that have seen everything. It's a tough job, long hours. And she was crying with such sentiment because of just discovering what had happened to her character, that every single person working in there on that tight spot was crying as well, just from the sentiment that she was putting out there from discovering what had happened to her character.
The story is, some films possess more than the power to entertain. Some start a movement or change lives. Today we discuss the unique challenges and opportunities of making a movie that moves. I'm Joel Ackerman. This is Lightwise. Jaime Hernandez is a film producer whose most recent film, Sound of Freedom, was released by Angel Studios in July. Here's a clip from Sound of Freedom.
I don't think I can do this job, Tim. There ain't no shame in backing me up.
How long you been doing this?
12 years now.
You've been doing this for 12 years?
Chris, it doesn't get any easier.
Let me ask you something. How many pedophiles you got?
As of today, 288. Not so bad.
How many kids you found?
Jaime, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. Want to talk first about Sound of Freedom. I've seen the film. It's beautiful. If you haven't seen it, go see it. Tell me, what were the biggest logistical obstacles on Sound of Freedom?
So from the get-go, it was just, a roller coaster of trying to find the best artistic approach to tackle this difficult subject matter. I would say that was the first obstacle. We wanted to, show the audience what the reality of the situation was without being overly graphic, without showing anything that might pull the audience away, and at the same time bring in a mixture of all the different artistic elements that could really make it a good, artistically sound film. So the music, the photography, everything was specifically designed so that it could soften the impact of the subject matter, but at the same time so that it would have a tie-in into the artistic approach and the director's vision to it. Moving on from there, there's always a challenge with independent filmmaking in terms of, getting the financing in place, then finding the right cast. There's a great story behind, Jim Caviezel's, casting and how he came on board to portray Tim Ballard. I mean, I usually in the industry, when you reach out to talent, they always connect you with their agents or managers. In this particular case, one day we were having dinner and we're bouncing around names, and it was actually Tim Ballard that kept saying, like, hey, have you guys considered Jim Caviezel? And we initially were like, well, a little bit skeptical. He's taller than Tim Ballard. For anyone that's met Tim, they don't necessarily look alike physically. And, we weren't sure whether that was perhaps the best actor in terms of physical traits to portray Tim. And, we said, okay, let's give it a shot. We reached out to Jim and, he picked up and we said, hey, we'd love to talk to you about this project. And immediately he was like, yeah, how about in a couple hours, if you want to come to my place. So, I think that was something that from the get-go, he was the right guy. He had a passion for, this particular subject matter. And after meeting with him and just pitching the story, he got emotional. And he said, like, hey, I feel like this is a project that I'm meant to do. So please call my agents and I want to do this film. So, that was definitely a big of a hurdle as well, just trying to find the right lead actor for the film. We wanted someone that wasn't only doing it, for the paycheck, or in this case, because it was another movie. We wanted someone that understood that it was more than a movie, that there was, a bigger picture, a bigger cause to it. And then, from there on, we were off to the races. We decided to, film the movie in Colombia. So we went down there. I had to spend 6 months between pre-production and production and just, going through the different phases. And of course, that presented some personal challenges for me, for my family. I mean, kudos to my wife, unbelievable woman, person that held the fort together at home with my kids. Now I got 5. At that time, I had 3, but, unbelievable support that I got from her. And from the production specifically, I mean, this was a very challenging production because we shot over 56 days in 43 different locations. So we were not in a single location for more than 2 days. And we shot in, over 5 or 6 different cities in Colombia, in very challenging conditions because everything was outdoors, mostly in the middle of the Colombian jungle with the temperature challenges that involves with, the different insects and just natural elements that are part of that ecosystem. And, to make matters worse, we didn't have a single buffer day. If we didn't finish one day of Jim Caviezel's scenes, he basically wrapped and the next morning had to be out on a plane to, start a new project. So we didn't have any time to make up for anything that we were not able to, finish any particular, shooting day. So there were just, so many challenges throughout the production, but thankfully we managed to pull through. We then after started post-production, and then when we were about to finalize the film, post-production on the film, we heard that the initial distributor with which we had set up the project initially was being acquired by another company, and therefore we were basically parting ways. They were not gonna stay with us as our distributor moving forward. So we said, well, that's definitely a challenge. Now we have to find new distribution for the project, but we're proud about the film, so I'm sure it's gonna be easy. And boom, at that point the pandemic hit. So a year and a half of just kind of weathering that pandemic, shut down not only the world, but, theaters, of course. So just had to weather that through and wait, knowing that we had this beautiful film, amazing film that we poured our heart and our time into. And then when the pandemic, started easing and things started reopening, we said, okay, this is now the time to release it to the world. So we started talking to a couple of other companies, distributors, and when we were about to, pull the trigger on something else, then that's when the second wave of that pandemic happened. So now it's like, hey, it doesn't seem like theaters are fully, able to reopen because now there is a second wave. So now you gotta wait until, that passes. And then finally, we met Angel Studios. And from the moment that we met him, it was, as they say, match made in heaven. We put so much time, energy, and passion into this project. I think every single person that worked on the production side of the film understood that it was just more than a movie. And because of that, they went the extra mile. And I think that extra mile is what people can see. It translates into the screen. And I feel that that's one of the reasons why people walk out of the theater moved and touched, because when you do something with passion and with love, when you do something that comes from your heart, it touches the audience's heart. And I think we wanted someone on the distribution side that would match that passion and that love with which we did the film. And from the get-go, we just, felt that from Angel Studios. We closed the deal quickly in a matter of days, and we were basically off to the races.
Love it. Less than 100 days from the time you signed the deal to the time the film was released on July 4th. Incredible. And by the way, the passion does come through in the film. You talked about all the various elements you put into it so that, there'd be hope there and soften the content matter a little bit. So great job on all counts. I think it was a success in that way. Really powerful film.
Thank you.
You talked about that it's more than a film, though, right? It's a mission or a movement, or you're trying to do something more than just tell a great, entertaining story, and how everyone was on board with that. You're producing other projects. You're a producer. Would you say that you look for that in all of your films, or is this unique amongst all your other projects, maybe your current projects?
in my particular case, I've always gravitated more to films that have deep subject matters that are relevant, and films that can transcend the screen and actually become movements. Films that I like to say have, feet, because, they walk with people, even past the movie theaters, and they become a living thing, a living organism, even in our society. I think that entertainment is a platform. And I think that, sometimes it gets a bad rep because of particular content that comes out of it that, certain segments of society might frown upon, that type of content. But I think that it's just a platform, and it's up to everyone that partakes in the entertainment industry to determine how you use that platform. You can use it for good and try to, put out into the world projects that are uplifting, that are positive, that shine a light on real issues and subject matters, or you can use it for the opposite. But I think everyone has a responsibility to at least acknowledge that, what you do does transcend and does impact society, and does particularly impact younger generations who look at entertainment and, most of the fashion trends, a lot of the conducts or slang that our society picks up is derived from entertainment. So we cannot deny that there's a very strong correlation between content being put out and, our society's overall behavior.
Do you ever find that as you talk to people about the kind of films you produce, that they automatically either want to label you or downgrade you because of the way you describe the types of films you want to make? Does anyone ever say, oh, he wants to make uplifting films, that must mean he wants to make cheesy, bad movies, or he must be a right-wing, terrible filmmaker? Does that ever happen?
Absolutely. I think there's a great difference between producing faith-based content or religious-oriented content, or just producing good, positive content. I think there's a difference there. While I definitely like to aspire or strive to produce movies that, again, are uplifting and that might be able to dive into more relevant subject matters, that might not always be the case. That's, always the goal. But I like to say that as long as the films don't go against my particular, values, beliefs, then if it's a film that I see something positive in, some positive traits, not all of them are as deep as Sound of Freedom, but I think that's a criteria that I mainly use to determine whether I'm going to partake in something or not. But I definitely get that a lot, that if you are trying to do positive content, that, people immediately like to put you in a box and say, hey, this is a faith-based filmmaker, or, he wants to produce religious content. And that's not necessarily true. I mean, I think there's a difference. And I think that if we were able to produce more content and more films that were just good films. I mean, I think society right now, we like to immediately put things in boxes and just label, people or, circumstances in a certain way. But for me, I think that if we were able to produce just movies that were viewed as good films, not a film for this particular group, for this particular audience, but just a good movie, I think that is what ultimately I would deem our goal. I mean, I just think that good films are films that anyone can relate to, that everyone can gravitate to, that, might be able to be bridges of unity, in a time where everything is so divisive.
Yeah, and I obviously don't know about your new films that you're working on, but for Sound of Freedom, if anyone's seen it, they know this is not a faith-based film. That's not to say that Tim Ballard wasn't acting with great faith, but it's not a religious film by its nature, right? It's not about a religion or religion in general. And yet, as you said, it's incredibly uplifting and then great entertainment also. What do you find as you look at, film, as you look for film, as you said, with feet? I love that phrase, that idea. Do you find that there are certain common characteristics that you say film with feet frequently have this, subjects that are X or whatever? Do you find there's similarities between films with feet?
Absolutely. I think when you I get a lot of scripts, a lot of projects, that we're asked to review, and you immediately by, reading the first, 10, 20 pages of a script, you get a sense on whether it's a film that might be for you or not. And it's so funny because the ones that I felt very strongly about, they all have this essence about them that you can immediately sense that it's more than just a movie or a piece of entertainment. There's something more to it. Either it dives into a subject matter that is relevant, or is really looking to communicate powerful ideas. And again, like I said before, I think that entertainment is just a platform, is a medium. It's a very powerful medium, but it's one that allows you to put ideas, thoughts out there, and if you use it to try to communicate powerful things, then you can really move people to action in different regards. And I think when that happens, and when you are able to identify those projects, I think that you start seeing basically mass reaction, throughout the different phases of the project, in which people start gravitating to it. You get actors that usually might be hard to, get to them, or for them to agree to come on board on a certain project, and you're able to, touch your heart in a way, or just appeal to, their human spirit, and say, yes, I want to do that. Same thing goes for the crew, or just people that work on the production. I think that you start getting those glimpses of people, responding favorably to it, or gravitating towards the project because it has that essence.
You mentioned that, right now there's a lot of divisiveness, in the world. Certainly everyone has their own opinion. Do you find, either personally or do you find in the industry, that people in the film industry, cast and crew, tend to want to pick camps, or is there a willingness to, hey, I don't necessarily agree with this actor or this director's point of view, his personal point of view, but as long as the movie doesn't go against my personal values, then I'm happy to work on it? Or is there a little, holding something against the actor by not participating in the movie? Does that happen?
I think you see a little bit of everything. I think you see people that are very vocal about certain, subject matters, and if they feel that there might be someone that might not agree with them on that regards, I think that could definitely be a criteria some of the time, not always. I mean, I don't think, there's situations that are 100% applicable to everyone. But I do think that, there's people that are more vocal. There's other people that are a little bit more, flexible. My particular view on things is, understanding again how we all come from different backgrounds. We all have, different upbringings, different belief systems. I think that if we really look at other, human beings, there's more things that unite us than those that divide us. Yet most of the time we pay so much attention, or only focus on the ones that divide us. And it's like, oh, that person, believes in this, which is opposite to what I believe in on that regards. But they might not see that, let's say out of 10 things, you agree on the other 9. So, I like to start there and, say, hey, we might not agree on that, but we agree on this. Let's focus on that and, develop a relationship, work together on something that is a common goal, or a project that, we both like. And if, down the line that develops a friendship or a relationship that can, open dialogue so that we can have a frank discussion about something else, then so be it. But I think that there's definitely a lot more things that unite, human beings. And I think that if we just started with that focus, I think, things would be a lot easier in a lot of different ways.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm wondering, as a producer, given that it is something that basically everyone agrees is one of the great evils, if not the great evil that faces our world today, if you have experienced or seen behind the curtains that anyone has kind of resisted giving your film a platform or more attention because it's got Jim Caviezel and he's kind of been branded in a certain way in society, do you ever have any sense that there's prejudice against the film because of those who are associated with it?
I don't think prejudice might be the word I would use to describe it. I mean, I think that, as you mentioned, and as I mentioned before, we're definitely living in challenging times where we might be a bit divided as a society. And I think a lot of topics are controversial, nowadays, and everything immediately is, pigeonholed or put in a box. Oh, you're this, you're right, you're left, you're up, you're down. And I think that the positive thing about this mission with Sound of Freedom is that this is one of the few subject matters left on the table in which everyone can really rally behind. Doesn't matter, if you're, again, right, left, up, down, doesn't matter what your political affiliations are, what your background is. I doubt that anyone, except for people committing these crimes, are in favor of, this particular subject. And I think that's something that we really try to make an effort in communicating when it comes to the marketing of the film. I mean, in every film, you got hundreds of people that work on each specific project. I mean, you got all the crew, all the cast, all the, different members of the production teams on the different phases. And it's impossible, again, to think that everyone would share the same, mindset, the same values, the same beliefs. Jim definitely has his, and other members of the film have theirs. But I think that this is not about what one person thinks. That person is entitled to their opinion. You can either share or not share that opinion, but regardless of what you might have in common with them or not have in common with them, I think that the one thing that we cannot ignore is that we can all agree that this is something that we need to put an end to. I mean, this is without a doubt one of the most heinous and atrocious things happening in our society today. And I think the only way we can really make a difference and hopefully put an end to this is for everyone to come together and use their talents and their platforms to try to chip in and make a difference.
How do you feel about cancel culture? Is that something that you ever think about, or has it touched you in any way in your filmmaking or life at all?
No, necessarily. I mean, I do believe that we're living in difficult times, just with internet, social media, everything, being so out there, so exposed, and, us as human beings having the inclination to immediately, again, label something or, put something in a box or, cancel it in a certain regards because we disagree with it. And I just think it's part of where we're at, timing-wise, society-wise, in terms of technology and how we're coping with the use, and I would dare say the healthy use of those platforms. But I think people are definitely entitled to their opinion, although the only caveat that I would, say or include is that I don't think that we should look at things in absolutes. I think that nothing is always like, fully black or white. I think there's always kind of nuances to it. And I think that, we should try to give people the benefit of the doubt whenever possible and not be so quick to, jump to conclusions.
Let's go back and talk a little bit more about Sound of Freedom. You're dealing with a very heavy, dark subject matter, child trafficking, yet you've got children in the film. And again, you do a very good job, Alejandro and Rod Barr and yourself and all the crew involved did a great job of not revealing too much detail about that in the film, so that it's not too disturbing for viewers. For the children who were on set, the child actors, how did you handle that? Did they know what this movie was about, and how much was that something you left up to their parents, or how was that handled?
That's a great question. I mean, first of all, I gotta send a shout out to every single child actor that participated on the film. For those of you that have had the opportunity to watch it, I mean, their performances are unbelievable. I mean, they do an excellent job in, not only bringing their characters to life, but also transmitting that sentiment behind, this difficult subject matter. I think that we were always very mindful about how this might be a difficult subject matter to address with children. We left that up to the parents, of course, but when it came to our stance as a production, we tried not to really dive or, share too much about, the overall gruesomeness of the subject matter or the total storyline. So they were just, piece-fed information that they needed for their specific scenes and their specific roles. So there's this, anecdote that I share that the girl that plays a character of Rocio in the film, she didn't know or didn't find out about what had happened to her character in the movie that, gets kidnapped and, sexually exploited until the last day or the day before the last day of wrapping production. And when she found out what, her character had gone through, like she started like crying in such an emotional way. And, she was at that moment preparing for a scene where basically her character is also crying on the scene, after certain things happened to her, on that part of the film. And when we shot that, it was in a tight space. We were about 20 people because it was in a bathroom, and we had a dolly shot, and the camera moved through the hall, and then it got into the bathroom, and she was on the tub. And like, production crews are tough. Everyone that works in entertainment, I like to joke that it's a little bit of a circus because you travel all around the world. These are people that have seen everything. It's a tough job, long hours, and she was crying with such sentiment because of just discovering what had happened to her character, that every single person working in there on that tight spot was crying as well, just from the sentiment that she was putting out there from discovering what had happened to her character. And to me, that's just one of the anecdotes that really, I remember so vividly, so fondly, but that I also think that summarize, a bit of what we went through with the film, and how the overall heart and the underlying subject matter is what carried the film through in a lot of different ways.
How do you think being a father, you're a father of 5, as you said, you're a father of 3 at that time, how did that affect you personally as producer of this film?
I mean, I think it affected me in a lot of different ways. Number one, again, spending so much time away from home. Number two, discovering all these negative things and, everything that was happening to children worldwide, but also how it was happening so close to home. I mean, a lot of people think that this is only happening abroad or in other countries, but it's happening in our own backyards. And that immediately makes you a little bit more, I don't know if paranoid is the right word, but overprotective with your children, So I'm definitely a lot more conscious about, security and, putting attention or closer attention when I'm out with my kids to, what might happen in any given circumstance, because, they're taken in a second, in a heartbeat. And most of the times, I mean, adults are there. It's just you turn your back and, something terrible can happen. So it definitely makes you a lot, more aware about that. And just independent, production and filmmaking, it definitely requires a lot of sacrifices. I mean, it requires a lot of personal sacrifice. It requires sometimes, you being able to contribute to the project, whether it be your time, financially in different ways. It really takes everything that you have in order to shepherd it through and have it see the light of day. So again, as I shared at the beginning, this has definitely been a longer than expected journey. I mean, from the moment that we met Tim Ballard up until, now when the film's about to come out, it's been a little over 8 years.
Obviously, the film coming out, for example, isn't going to itself stop child or human trafficking. But what do you hope may happen as a result of this film getting out there?
Our goal is just for people to hopefully be inspired to take action. I think after that point, it's up to everyone to use their talents and their own individual platforms to see how they can best contribute to make a difference and put an end, to trafficking in general. I think for, people involved in politics, it might be using their positions to perhaps pass better legislation or make sure that there's, stricter laws that can actually, punish the perpetrators of this crime in a more severe way. For people in other capacities, use whatever position they might have of power or platform in order to leverage that in a way that can significantly contribute to putting an end to this. For us, our way of contributing was, again, trying to create a film that can hopefully not only inspire, but touch people's hearts and move them to action.
You mentioned how great a fit Angel Studios has been as a distributor, their passion behind it, matching, it's at least at some level, yours as a filmmaker. What do you think of Angel's model, the democratization of the green lighting process, that every film that gets greenlit through Angel has to go through not just a board of executives or a development team, but it has to be approved by a large percentage of people who are actual Angel investors and viewers, tens of thousands of people strong. A certain percentage of those people have to say, yes, I would be very disappointed if this film wasn't made. So they've really democratized the green lighting process. What do you think of that?
We're living in times where the consumption of content is unprecedented. We're watching content as a society at an unprecedented rate. There's so many new, production entities and different ways of getting content out there through different models, through different platforms, that I think that it's just inspiring to see so many new companies that are, coming out to the scene with different new outside of the box kind of models. And I think that applies to Angel Studios. I think they've identified, what their model is. They're trying to do things that are a little bit different from what has been traditionally done in Hollywood. And I think that so far they've seen great success with some of the strategies that they're implementing. So I always like to say that, success comes to those who dare, not only dare try, but dare experiment, with things that are different. I think, as it's well known, the definition for insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results. So for them to come out with things like the Pay It Forward or the Guild or just these different tools that are part of their model or phases that are part of their model, I think it's commendable. I think they're definitely on the right track. And I think so far the success they had with The Chosen and other projects just speaks to that. And, I would like to, share this anecdote as well. But I've been working closely with them on the marketing, and, one of their key executives on the marketing team, I'm not going to share his name out of respect, but I was talking to him one day and I heard that his father, was very ill. And that was about 2 weeks ago. And, I told him, hey, heard about your father. How is he doing? He said, well, he's, very ill. We don't know if he's going to pass away. And, I'm really concerned about him. And I asked him, are you going to go see him and spend some time with him? And what he told me is something that, really just, shook me, because he said, both my parents saw the film, about 2 weeks ago, and they're not letting me go home to be with my father, despite knowing that he might pass away, because they're telling me that this is such an important film that I need to stay here and make sure that it goes out into the world. So when he shared that, I was like, yes, that's just proof that they're as passionate as we were about making it.
Thank you so much for spending the time with us and sharing your thoughts and feelings. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the invitation.
Lightwise is a video podcast production of Angel Studios, released every other Tuesday. To watch more episodes or be notified of new episodes of Lightwise, click subscribe or download the Angel app now, wherever you get your apps. If you'd prefer to listen instead of watch, you can find the Lightwise audio podcast version wherever you get your podcast. For more on Sound of Freedom, check out the episodes with actor Jim Caviezel and director Alejandro Monteverde. Also, to watch Sound of Freedom, which is still playing in select theaters, go to angel.com/tickets. This episode of Lightwise was hosted by Joel Ackerman. It was written and directed by Joel Ackerman, produced by Cameron Jackson and John Shea Van Sickle, and edited by Cameron Jackson, with sound recording by Garrett Briggs and sound mixing by Brian Densley.